Officials in Missouri say 17 people died last night in the duck boat tragedy. 14 others did survive. The boat capsized on Table Rock Lake in Branson during a thunderstorm. But officials don't know if the captain checked the forecast ahead of time. Earlier, I spoke to CBS News transportation correspondent Kris Van Cleave about the investigation. Kris, I'm watching this video. You can see how terrible the weather is. I know that's going to be one of the issues that's brought up. What do we know about when the NTSB will begin an investigation here?
Well, the NTSB has launched a GO team. They are en route to Branson. It is not one of the easier places to get to. There aren't a lot of direct flights, for example, so it's going to take them a few hours to get on the ground. We expect them there by mid-afternoon Eastern time, and then we'll get some kind of an update, preliminary update, sometime late tonight, although we probably won't learn a ton at this point as the investigators are still getting on scene. The lead investigator worked on the El Faro sinking, is a very experienced maritime investigator, and they're essentially going to look at three things here. They're going to look at the people involved, meaning the operator of the duck boat, and what was their decision-making process to stay on the water, what was their awareness of the weather and what was forecast. They're going to look at the machinery, the duck boat itself, and I'll give you some background about duck boats here in a second. But they're also going to look at the environment, in this case, the weather. What hazards did the weather pose? How well was that storm forecast? Should someone have known that storm was going to get that severe as quickly as it did? And then they're also going to look at survivability factors. What about life jackets? We heard the owner of the duck boat say on CBS this morning that life jackets were on board the duck boat, but people by law are not required to wear them in Missouri. And one of the criticisms of duck boats is the myriad of folks that regulate them. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has jurisdiction when they're on the road, the Coast Guard on the water. Cities and states have their own regulations. Would life vests, if everybody had been wearing them, made a difference? Would they have been able to get out? There's an enclosure on the top of that duck boat. Could that have been an issue for people getting out? Those are all things the National Transportation Safety Board will start to look at here and will make recommendations. This is not the first deadly duck boat accident. There have been several in the last 20 years, some on land, some on water, and certainly these boats do have their critics.
Yeah, now you said you were going to talk a little bit about them. If you live in sort of a big city that has water around it, you probably have one of these duck boats touring tourists around. They're amphibious. They drive on the street and then they enter into the water. You're right. Even though the owner of this duck boat said nothing like this has ever happened before, maybe not, in Missouri, but it's definitely happened before in other cities. Sometimes mishaps on the water, sometimes mishaps on the land. Give us an idea of just how this vehicle operates.
Sure. So the duck boat was built and designed in the 1940s. It was a World War II piece of military equipment used to move troops and supplies both on the ground and on water. They have been modified, retrofitted, in some cases expanded in the years since. There's about 120 to 130 still operating, primarily as tour boats, trucks in the U.S. They're very popular. You see them in Boston. You see them in Washington, New York, Hawaii. And so they are old equipment. One of the criticisms is on land, because the driver is 10 to 12 feet off the bow. They have a lot of blind spots, which has led to accidents. And then it's how are they maintained? We saw in 1999 the Hot Springs, Arkansas sinking of a duck boat where 13 people died. That was blamed on inadequate maintenance. 2010, a duck boat stalled on the Delaware River in Philadelphia and collided with a barge. That accident was blamed on the tugboat mate that was pushing the barge, his inattention, but still 2 tourists died in that accident. In Seattle in 2015, you'll remember on land, a duck boat collided with a bus on a bridge after its axle broke. The NTSB found that there was a defect in the axle, and the axle manufacturer ended up paying about $1 million fine for not reporting that properly, but 5 people died in that accident. Boston in 2017 increased their regulations around duck boats, which are very popular in Boston, after 2 fatal accidents on land. So there certainly have been accidents with these vehicles. They are unique ways to transport people, and their design dates back to World War II.
Right. Kris Van Cleave, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed.